It's 5 o'clock. I call the meeting to order. Please rise for the flag salute.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please be seated. We will start by approving the agenda. Ms. Exline, what have we got?
We do not need an executive session for personnel, Madam President.
Thank you.
Madam President, I move approval of the agenda with the noted change.
Do I hear a second?
Already second.
Emma seconds. Any discussion? All in favor, raise your right hand. Motion carried 7-0. Next on the agenda is recognitions and presentations with the Superintendent's Excellence Awards with Jennifer Bradford Vernon.
Good evening. Today we will recognize spring sports day qualifiers who were involved in regional and state playoff action beyond the end of last school year. Please keep in mind that some of our coaches and their teams will not be here due to fall sports and that some of the students graduated in May. First, we recognize 3 Central High golfers who qualified for state. Their coach is Patrick Newell, and because all of them are involved in other activities this evening, we'll just announce their names. State qualifiers were Lucas Freelove, Senior, Collister Ryan, Junior, and 1 graduate, Aaron Hawley. Congratulations to these student athletes. There were 6 golf students at South High School who qualified for state and finished 10th place as a team. Jason Hooper is the coach. Kevin Quinley is the assistant. Will you please join Superintendent Exline in the front? Will our golf students please line up next to them as well? And parents, if you'd like to take a photo, please stand and we'll be glad to pause. Team members were Gavin Giroux, Jr. Graduates were Trey Turner, Xavier Rivas, Parker Renz, Parker Norton, and Cole Stein. Would you please allow the Board of Education to congratulate you now?
Congratulations.
Nice job, Madam.
Good work. Thank you.
Thanks for what you do for our kids.
Thank you very much.
Kevin, good job.
Our next group of awards go to South High School athletes who qualified for the 5A state track and field meet. Coach Justin Ebert won't be able to attend this evening. Jody Nutter, assistant head coach, will present the track team. Will you please join Superintendent Exline? And will all the track students line up as well? We'll be glad to announce names. In the boys division, there were 12 South High School qualifiers. Team members were A.J. Johnson, sophomore, Brian Taylor, junior, Brant Cox, freshman, Hugh Hill, Jace Varela, Colin Schreiber, sophomore. Team members who graduated were Isaac Mitchell, DeAndre Coman, Keaton Munsell, Brandon Rechtenwald, Kyle Quill, and Jaden Miller. In the girls' division, there were 4 South High School qualifiers. Team members were Victoria Maxton, Jr., Gentry Alderson, freshman, and Lauren Rubenstein, Jr. And the team member who graduated was Georgia Bell. Congratulations to all. Our next group of awards goes to Central High School athletes who qualified for the 5A state track meet. Due to football practice today, Coach Rick O'Neill won't be able to attend, but J.D. Garber will represent the track team. Will you please join Superintendent Exline, and will all the track students please line up as well? It's that time of year. In the girls' division, there were 6 Central High qualifiers. Team members were Elizabeth Collins, senior, placed 7th in the pole vault. Kaden Cobb, senior. Reagan Geisler, junior. Brianna Torres, senior. Peyton Griffin, senior. Cora White, sophomore. In the boys' division, there were 3 graduates, Riley Counts, Blake Olmstead, Josh Morrow. Would you please allow the Board of Education to congratulate you now?
Thank you for all you do.
Next, we recognize baseball state qualifiers. At South High, Chris Mice is the coach. Assistant coaches are Tyler Burnett, Tyler Smith, and Jeremiah Thornton. Will you please join Superintendent Exline in the front? And will all the baseball students please line up as well?
This is all the injured. That's what they're not somewhere else.
Team members were Owen Bully, sophomore. Kason Long, junior. Drew Baird, junior. Charlie Baird, junior. Cade Hannert, junior. Caleb Copeland, junior. Evan Vaughn, sophomore. Siobhan Suarez, sophomore. Colby Bully, junior. Jonas Bauman, junior. Jarrett Pittenger, freshman. Ethan Emmerman, freshman. Zach Isaacson, junior. Graduates were Cole Wassenberg, Luke Strait, Mason Lundgren. Will you please allow the Board of Education to congratulate you now?
Congratulations. We'll try not to hurt your arm. Congratulations. Nice work, you guys. Appreciate what you do. Good job. Congratulations. Good work. Congratulations. Thanks for everything you do. Thank you so much for what you do. Thank you for what you do with kids. Thank you.
Thank you, Coach, very much. All of you. Thank you.
And we're pleased to have one more track student to announce this evening.
Can we find him?
Congratulations, Brant Cox.
My friend. Congratulations.
Congrats. Thank you so much for what you're doing, kids.
Our next group of awards goes to swimmers at Central High School who qualified for state competition. Salina Central Girls Swimming placed 21st out of the 31 teams that scored at the state championship meet in Topeka. They placed 19th in the 200 medley relay, 11th in the 200 freestyle relay, and 16th in the 400 freestyle relay. John Sheffergen coaches the girls swimming and diving teams from South and Central High. Will you please join Superintendent Exline, and will all the swimming students please line up as well? Salina Central team members were Vivian Wolfson, was a foreign exchange student last year, sophomore. Olivia Moore, sophomore. Emily Strawman, sophomore. Emily competed in the 200 medley relay. Zoe Burmaster, freshman. Zoe qualified in the 100 backstroke, placing 15th in the consolation finals and the 50 freestyle. She was a member of the 200 and the 400 freestyle relay. Bethany Schulte, freshman, and a team member who graduated was Annie Ewing. Would you please allow the Board of Education to congratulate you now?
Proud of you. Congratulations.
Thanks so much for what you're doing.
Tennis state qualifiers at Central High are recognized next. Due to a Lady Mustang tennis meet, Coach Michael Gall won't be able to attend, but will all the tennis players please line up next to Superintendent Exline at this time? The following students were 5A state tennis champions. This was the 12th state title in school history. Qualifying and competing were Reed McHenry, sophomore, and Max Schaefer, sophomore. They finished as state runners-up in 5A state doubles and had a record of 31 wins and 2 losses. Brady Stack, sophomore, and McCabe Green, sophomore, finished 4th in 5A state doubles and had a record of 21 wins and 7 losses. Colin Phelps, freshman, finished 7th in 5A state singles and had a record of 26 wins and 9 losses. Austin Beatty, sophomore, finished 11th in 5A state singles and had a record of 24 wins and 12 losses. Please allow the Board of Education to congratulate you now.
Good job, you guys. Outstanding work. Keep it up.
Proud of you.
Really proud of what you guys are doing. Congratulations so much. Great job.
This evening, our last group of awards goes to French students at South High School who placed in a language competition. Brenda Geist is the teacher. Will you please join Superintendent Exline in the front? And will all the French students line up as well? Team members were Level 1 participants. All received honorable mention in national rankings. Adriana Salas, Jr., placed 10th in the state. Yesenia Torres, sophomore, placed 9th in the state. Justice Martinson, sophomore, placed 8th in the state. Evan Patchett, sophomore, placed 8th in the state. Michelle Tran, Jr., placed 7th in the state. Level 2 participants, Miriam Benavides, Jr., placed 9th in the state. Diana Geist, Jr., placed 8th in the state. Jocelyn Quavez, Jr., placed 7th in the state, and honorable mention in national rankings. And one graduate, Trey Turner. Would you please allow the Board of Education to congratulate you now?
What a fine performance. You take the blow off the top this year, will you? Great job. Congratulations. Thanks so much.
Thank you for coming. Next on the agenda is the consent agenda, which includes the minutes of the August 27, 2019 regular meeting, the personnel report, financial reports including August bills list and August bond bills list, bond budget summary, approving the Lakewood Middle fundraising activity for an online store where Lakewood and Mustang apparel will be sold, and approving the South Middle fundraising activity for the sale of chocolates. Do I have a motion on the consent agenda? No,
Madam
Medra.
President, I move that we accept the consent agenda items as read.
I have a second. Gary seconds. Is there any discussion? All in favor, raise your right hand. All opposed, same sign. Motion carried 7-0. Next on the agenda is the public forum. Is there anyone here who would like to speak? Seeing none, we will go on to the action agenda, which is the bond resolution, and Mr. Varenberg is here to talk to us.
Good afternoon, everyone. Greg Varenberg with Raymond James, and appreciate the chance to be back here to share some good news with you. We completed, or as some of you may recall, August 13th, we had the board meeting with the authorizing resolution, which gave us permission to start working on the bond refinancing. And once we had that permission, we pulled together the information for that would be shared with investors, which is in the form of a prospectus or a preliminary official statement. And that information was compiled, bond attorney worked on the legal documents, and a rating request was submitted to Moody's Investor Service. And pleased to report, as I've shared with you in the past, that the district had its AA2 bond rating affirmed by Moody's, and that's a very favorable bond rating. It helps, it's reflective of the financial management of the district, and it's very helpful in keeping your borrowing costs down and capturing and maximizing savings when we're completing a refinancing. And so once we had all of that information ready to where we could enter the bond market, we were a little bit surprised at how interest rates had continued to improve. And our original plan was to complete the sale of the bonds either yesterday or today and bring you the results this evening at the board meeting. But the savings had increased so much that we decided to move forward with the sale on August 28th and lock in that savings. And I'll walk you through the results of the refinancing, but I think in hindsight that proved to be a very good decision for the district, and I really appreciate the extra effort from the administration of the district to help facilitate moving forward quickly with that sale. But as I had shared with you when we met on August 13th, what really led to this opportunity was a rally in the bond market and decline in interest rates, and as evidenced by the 10-year Treasury. The 10-year Treasury in last November was 3.3%, and by the end of July had dropped down to 2.05%. And that was surprising from a couple of perspectives. That's a very large drop in a short period of time, but it's also surprising in that the economists were predicting coming into 2019 that it would be a fairly stable interest rate environment with maybe some gradual increases in rates, and it's been anything but that. But what really happened after the end of July, and it was started by the Federal Reserve had its Federal Reserve Open Market Committee meeting on July 31st, and there was a interest rate cut. And then following that, there was some tensions that escalated between the U.S. and China over tariffs and trade war, and that really caused some concerns in the financial markets that led to some pretty significant declines in interest rates. And where we saw a fairly steady decline throughout the first 7 months, we saw a very rapid decline during August, which is what caused us to see that increasing savings and accelerating moving forward with the issue. What's interesting is that 10-year Treasury had gone from 3.3% to 1.48% at the time that we sold the bonds on August 28th, and then today it stands at 1.64%. So it makes you feel good in looking back that even almost to the day, we timed this very well for the sale of refunding bonds. The portion of the outstanding bonds that we were looking at refinancing was really subject to the interest rates and the level of savings that we were going to achieve. And we had looked at anywhere from 58 million to 68 million of the outstanding bonds that would be candidates for refinancing. And if interest rates were a little bit higher, then we probably would have aimed for refinancing a smaller amount, just because it would have had been a less efficient refinancing. But what we ended up with is taking all of the bonds in the year 2025 through 2034 and including those in the refinancing. At the time we decided to move forward with the issue, the principal coming due in the year 2024 did produce some savings, but it was a very minor amount of savings, and we decided that it wasn't contributing enough to include in the refinancing, so we kept that piece out and really focused on the most efficient portion of the refinancing. The savings that we had estimated going into the bond refinancing was about $1,740,000 on July 31st. And then when we met with you at that board meeting earlier in August, we showed two scenarios. One was $2,711,000. The other was $2,824,000. And again, it was going back and forth on just which portion of the bonds made sense to refinance. But what's really exciting is that the final savings to the district ended up being $5,086,727. And when we started looking at this, if you had mentioned to me that that might be the outcome of this process, I would have thought that's dreaming just a little too much, and we ought to be happy with 2.7 or 2.8. But it really is amazing how volatile the bond markets are and how much movement we're seeing, and that if you catch it at just the right time, it can really magnify that savings. And you were one of the first two school districts in the state to proceed with this type of refinancing in this recent bond market rally. And both school districts, we worked on the first two, both school districts saw a similar result where we thought we were going to get a much smaller level of savings, and it really jumped up, and they were sold during that same week. And now we're seeing a little bit higher interest rates, and a lot of other school districts are looking at doing the same thing that you're thinking about, which anytime we have a flood of supply in the bond market, that makes it difficult to get the best possible interest rate. So feel really good about getting a higher level of savings and feel really good about the timing. And again, that couldn't have been accomplished without your administration helping push forward that rating process and help with getting everything ready to be completed and sold. And so the interest rate on the bonds that we refinanced had an average rate of 4.28%. The interest rate that we locked in on the new bonds is 2.47%, so a reduction of 1.81 or 181 basis points. So that's clearly that drop in interest rates that led to that level of savings. But again, just to recap, we had the affirmation of the AA2 rating, and you should be extremely proud of that. There's only a couple of school districts that have a higher rating than you do in the state of Kansas, and you compare well both in the state and nationally, and that's something you should be very proud of. And the $5,086,000 in savings is significant. And then when you add that to some of the prior refinancings that the board has done, that brings your grand total to $10,342,000. And that's when you take a step back and think, that's $10 million that's staying in the community and not being paid out to investors in the form of interest. And that's a lot of money that stays here rather than being paid out of the community. So you've taken several steps over the years to capture savings when opportunities present themselves. And so it's really added up to be a meaningful amount. And again, I think that being one of the first 2 school districts to jump in and take advantage of this opportunity, you never really know when you start to see interest rates start to go back up. But just given the supply and some of the things that are happening in the bond market, it feels like we may have picked the absolute bottom on the interest rates. And time will tell, but still at this point, it looks pretty favorable from a timing perspective. So with that said, again, I want to thank the administration, but I also want to thank the board for giving me the opportunity. I had been with another firm for 20 years and had the chance to work with you, and you gave me the opportunity now at my new position at Raymond James. So thank you for that. I'd be happy to answer any questions, and if the savings is acceptable, the action that you would take would be to adopt the bond resolution, and that locks in the interest rates and savings, and then it's simply a matter of taking care of some paperwork at this point moving forward. So.
Thank you. Gary?
Yeah, Greg, the savings to the taxpayers will be realized over how many years?
It's over the life of the bonds, and your bonds have been sold over a 20-year period. And so on this issue, we had our final payment in the year 2034. So your savings ends up being about $460,000 per year in the years 2024 through 2034. Those are the years where you actually realize that savings, but I would also say that when Lisa works on the budget every summer and looks at where the bond and interest fund needs to be set, she's not only looking at the current year, but what's the mill levy trend over time. And if you see pressure on the mill levy in future years, then you have to be careful of not setting the mill levy too low today. And so having that savings, even though it doesn't begin until 2024, helps you with every budget between now and then, because you've got some breathing room when you get out there into those years.
Okay, thanks.
Sure.
I want to say thank you for your work, and as they say, $1 million here, $1 million there, and pretty soon you're talking real money.
It's true. Well said.
Jim, yes, you would like to have a motion?
Madam President, I move that we approve the resolution for the Series 2014 General Obligation Refunding Bonds as presented.
Do we have a second?
Madam President, I
Midra,
second it.
yes. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, raise your right hand. Motion carried 7-0. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next on the agenda is the discussion agenda, which is about the student performance update, ages and stages questionnaire from Tiffany Snyder.
Good evening. Tonight I'm going to talk about the Ages and Stages Questionnaire, which is given to all of our incoming kindergartners in the district. The purpose of the Ages and Stages Questionnaire is to really know what students, what skills and abilities they have as they enter into kindergarten, as far as their overall development and their social emotional well-being. It's important to realize that it is not intended to provide a diagnosis of the student, but rather where are they developmentally and what interventions do we need to be putting in place to help them be successful as they start their kindergarten year. The way this looked here in Salina is the first 2 days that students needed to report to school, our kindergartners had a chance to set up, the parents had a chance to set up conferences with the teachers. And so parents would come in at their scheduled conference time, fill out the 2 questionnaires that we'll be talking about tonight, and then have an opportunity to visit with the kindergarten teacher at that time. And the reports were immediately run for the teachers and the parents so they could sit down and talk about the results of those reports. And that seems to be a very positive thing as far as building the relationship with parents and the teachers right away. We have a great turnout. On average, we have 94% of our parents come to the conferences and fill out the questionnaire. 5 out of 8 of our buildings had 96 to 99% turnout. And so it seems to be very positive. First step in developing that relationship with the school. And this is a required assessment now from the state because it does help us provide some information on our kindergarten readiness goal. And the window for this to give it is August 1st through September 20th. But the way we choose to do it is the first 2 days of school. If the parents aren't able to make it because of work or something else that comes up, the schools have done a really good job of getting the link to the parents so they can complete the questionnaire on their phone or at home on their computer. Or if they don't have that capability or the access, then they can take it on just paper pencil and bring it into the school. 3 times to get a hold of parents if they don't make it in to either do it at home on their own device or paper pencil. One of the questions that I often get from teachers when we first started giving this last year was how accurate can it be? If parents are the ones filling out this questionnaire, is it truly reliable information that we're getting? And there was some intensive research done on this questionnaire, and there is a 93% agreement between the parent and the educator or the professional that's giving it. And so there is high reliability, high validity of this assessment. And when you think about, a 5-year-old, if you've ever been in the first day of school and the kindergartners are coming in, you have some kindergartners that come in, they run in, they're excited, they can't wait to be there, and then they cry when the day's over because they don't want to go. You have some that just kind of walk in, go with the flow, and will say hi and smile. And then you have some that will look, you'll go over there and greet them and, try to take their hand, and they'll immediately run behind, the adult and hide behind their leg, and they won't say a word to you. So if you have this little one coming in on the first day and you're sitting them down in a room with an educator or professional, even though they may be very friendly, welcoming, but they don't know that person, have never seen them before, they are probably not going to perform, and they may not even say one word to try to get this screener complete. And so although there are times when parents may overestimate some of the skills, that their students possess, a lot of times as professionals we may not see, get a true picture of what that child can do because of their demeanor. They may be very shy, and we underestimate what they can do. So the research does support that this is a valid and reliable assessment that parents do fill out. The first questionnaire, there are 2 questionnaires that parents fill out when they come in, and the first one that I'm going to talk to you about tonight is the Ages and Stages 3. And the 3 just means that it's the 3rd edition that has come out with some changes. And with the ASQ3, this is more of the academic piece of it. So we're looking at communication, gross motor, fine motor, problem solving, and personal social. There's 6 questions per category, and both questionnaires are written at a 4th grade to a 6th grade reading level. That way, we're hopeful that most parents are able to read it and can complete it. Also, when parents come in to the school, we make sure we have interpreters available, as well as adults in the room that can help if they are struggling to complete the questionnaire. But it is written at a 4th to 6th grade level, so parents can hopefully fill that out. The next several slides, I'm going to go over some of the sample questions that parents see for each of those categories. And the first one is communication. And so when we think about communication, can they use words to describe where objects are? Above, below, over, under. Can they tell you after you read them a story? You can prompt them with questions. Tell me how the story began. How did it end? Can your child use the words heavier, shorter, taller? So those are some of the questions that parents will answer under the communication. And as you can see, in 2018, 87% of our parents did not have concerns with their child's communication. This year, in August, we had 86% of parents that did not have concerns. The next category is gross motor. Those are the larger motor skills. Students, can they run? Can they jump? Can they kick a ball? Some of the questions that are asked here: can they repeat a pattern of 3 movements at least 2 times? Can they catch a small ball? Can they hop on 1 foot? And I should have mentioned this, but when parents are answering this, they're answering with yes, sometimes, or no on the ASQ3. The next category is fine motor. So can they cut? Can they hold a pencil? Can they write? Can they draw a picture of a person? And it does offer some suggestions for parents as far as when do we mark sometimes or not yet. Are they able to draw a person with 3 parts, with a head, body, arms, or legs? Are they just drawing a head with the legs? So it does kind of give some decisions on how they can rate that. Can the student fold a piece of paper in half to make sure both sides meet? So those are some of the questions in our fine motor. As you can see, this last year, we had 79% of parents that are not concerned about their child's fine motor skills. The fourth category is problem solving. And really, when I look at these questions, I see more of the academic piece. In a series of 7 letters, can the student sound those letters out? Can they make rhyming words? If you ask them to show you your left hand, can they do that? Can they show you their right foot? Can they do that? So it's more of the academic piece. And here you can see that 70% of our parents do not have concerns with their child. A lot of these questions, unless they went to a preschool, this would be a section that would be more difficult for students because it is more letters and sounds on these 6 questions here. And the last category for the ASQ3 is the personal social, and it's more of the social emotional type questions that are asked here. Do they take turns playing games at home? Can they try to solve conflicts on their own? Will they ask to use other people's things without just taking it from them? And 86% of our parents do not have concerns with their child in this area. So if we look at that overall, in all the categories together, you will see just a small decline except in gross motor. And I'm going to share with you before I end tonight, I'll share with you some of the things that we're doing in the classroom that addresses each of these categories. The very last part of the ASQ3, there is a section for overall. And here it's really gathering qualitative information. Parents are asked, again, some simple questions, but this time they answer either yes or no. And if they answer with a no, then they need to give an explanation. And so if you think about if you're teaching a student swimming and you're trying to teach them, 5 different strokes. So you might be the breaststroke, a side stroke, a butterfly, backstroke, or the front crawl. And let's say they can do all of those pretty well, except the butterfly. There's one area in the butterfly that they just really aren't getting. And so overall, we would say that they're not quite efficient. We're not quite where they want them to be developmentally as far as the whole child. And so for this section here, in those 5 areas, maybe they did really well and they scored fairly high with no concerns, except when the parents had a chance to answer a question about their communication. Do they stutter? And they answered, yes, they have a concern. So they had to explain what that concern is. And so this overall section here, you'll see the score is a little different. We have just 44% of our parents said that they don't have concern. Some other examples of questions here would be, does your child talk like other children? Do they walk like other children? Do they run? And so it's more of the language, behavior, articulation, and actually some of the gross motor skills that maybe they didn't hit or answer on the other questions, but here's a chance for them to share some other concerns that they may be seeing in the home. And this is just a bar graph showing 44% this year have no concerns overall with their overall development, and the last year it was at 55. The second questionnaire that parents filled out when they came in for that conference time is the ages and stages, social, emotional, and the 2 is the second edition. And the areas that are screened here are self-regulation, compliance, social communication, adaptive functioning, autonomy, affect, and interaction with people. The questions for the social emotional questionnaire are not organized into sections like they were in the ASQ3, because all of these areas here fit under the social emotional umbrella. So they are just asked a series of questions. Some of the questions that they would see on the questionnaire at the kindergarten level is on self-regulation. Can the child calm down on their own fairly quickly? Do they destroy or damage things? Do they have trouble falling asleep? If something exciting is happening, can they calm down on their own in a short amount of time? They're asked questions about compliance. How does your child follow rules or directions at home or at the child daycare center if they go to a center? So it's really following directions and rules. What do they see at home and how their child's doing? Adaptive functioning, it's the physiological needs of the child. How independent are they? Are they able to go to the bathroom on their own? Do they sleep very well? Can they communicate if they're hungry? Do they stay away from dangerous things? The autonomy looks at the self-initiation to respond to others without any support. Do they seem to be worried about things that they really shouldn't be? Will they go to a friend's house? Will they explore new things? Are they too friendly to strangers? The affect is the ability for a child to express their feelings. Do they show concern for others if they see someone hurting? Do they show that it bothers them? Do they like to be hugged? Do other children like to play with them? When we look at social communication, are they able to express their interests or their needs? Will they look at you in the eye when you're talking to them? Do they let you know when they're hungry or sick or tired? And then they can use words to describe how they're feeling. I'm happy, I don't like that, she seems sad. Those are some of the questions they would see in that category. And then interaction. How do they interact socially with other adults and parents? Do they laugh and smile at home? Do they stay upset for a long period of time? Do they like to be around other children? Will they take turns and share when they're playing? So out of all of those concerns, out of all of those questions, here is where we scored in 2018 and 2019, because this is just the second year have given this. We are seeing an increase in our concerns from last year. And if we look at the monitor section and the concern section together, last year this year we had 17% of parents said that they are concerned about their child's social emotional development. And last year we had 12% of parents say that they're concerned. So we do see an increase there with some of the concerns with social emotional. Now, the monitor section here, this would be a really good place for teachers to go look at individual student reports, because they can pull each student's information, and it'll tell them exactly how they scored and where some of those concerns were, so that if they're in the monitor stages, maybe they can put an intervention in place to help turn that behavior around that they're struggling with. Also, with the ASQ, each school has learning activities that if you know that the student is having trouble with self-regulation, in the learning activities books, there is a section for a 60-month-old or 72-month-old for self-regulation, and those are activities that we could send home to parents to have them work on with them in the evenings or on the weekends. So those are some of the things that we can put into place if they're at the monitoring. If the concern, that is when we would move on to maybe the SIT process to get together with the student improvement team to talk about what can we do to help this child. There are some red flags from the screeners. What do we need to put in place to help him or her be more successful? Which brings us to the next slide. What are some things that we have happening in place? Because as you can see, some of the, the concerns this year from last year, they have increased. And we want to continue to use developmentally appropriate practices in our classroom. We want to use the components that we have found in research that are important in our kindergarten classroom, which is around creative play. That is an opportunity for teachers to work with students on social skills, on problem solving, working out conflict when they're in that center. We have academic centers on fine motor and writing. We use First Strokes as our curriculum for our writing centers, so they have that practice with fine motor, because if you remember from that slide, that is an area that we do have more concerns this year than we did last year. As far as the problem solving, that was another area that was a little bit lower. I think we had 70% of parents that showed no concern. Again, that's the academic piece, and that goes back to some of the child care centers, the preschools that students may be going to or not going to, and I think that plays a role in that percentage as far as the concerns that we're seeing there. And so the instruction that they're getting with phonological awareness, the sounds, the letters, come into play in our kindergarten classrooms. Our little ones have physical education, and so that's where they're working on gross motor skills, and our PE teachers have written units specifically to work on some of those developmental skills, where they're throwing the ball, they're kicking the ball, they're dribbling, the locomotor, striking a volleyball are some of the activities that they do in PE. Of course, we have social emotional lessons, and I think part of that is, when you're in the playground and you're out at recess and there's some little ones having trouble, you take the time out and take part of that teachable moment to work through some of that conflict that may be happening or some of the lack of social skills. You just take time right there and work through that with them. And then finally, we were able to hire Patricia Haas this year, and she is our early education, family, and community liaison. And she's just getting started, but she's really digging in deep to join with some of our community partners to work on the early childhood piece, to get information into the homes of parents that maybe have some little ones that will be coming up to join us in the upcoming years. And this year, during the screener, when parents came in to fill this out, they also gave us some information where their child had gone to a preschool. So that way we can kind of gather some data to see where do we need to put some efforts in, who can we reach out to develop even a deeper partnership with them to help with this piece. All right, questions?
I wanted to ask if you could just tell us Patricia Haas's background.
She was at Heartland prior to coming here as a family consultant, and I am not sure, Mrs. Exline, I don't know how long she had been there, but she worked with families, I know, at Heartland prior.
She had been with Heartland quite some time and has been doing a lot of early childhood, family communication, working with parents on those early childhood skills. So it was a really good match for what we were wanting to try to bridge that early childhood program with our kindergarten, and for us to better understand what does readiness really look like.
Thank you. Any other, yes, Gary?
Do we know how many of our kindergartners come in, have at least 1 year of preschool? And can we tell the difference when they've had that year?
That is what we're hoping to gather a little bit this year, as we had parents complete just a short survey on their kindergarten experience, so we can start tracking maybe some of that information to see how much they have had or haven't had in the past.
So in the past, we haven't been able to.
We haven't done that, but we just put together a survey in our district leadership team to gather that information.
Jim, did you have a comment?
My question was kind of along the same line. I just wondered if, and it may be too early or the data may not be available, but was there a correlation between those parents who were concerned and those who had gone through preschool?
Oh, well, and hopefully, I think once we gather this survey information, we'll maybe be able to answer that question at that time. I know that they actually were working on that today. All of the information came in, so we can figure out how to best use that and manipulate the data that we did receive to plan for some next steps.
Any other questions? No? Then thank you very much.
Thank you.
We'll hear from you again, I'm sure.
Yes, you will.
Next on the agenda is school board reports and upcoming dates of importance, which include Saturday, September 14th, the Teacher of the Year Luncheon at the Hilton Garden Inn at noon, and Tuesday, October 1st, the KASB Fall Regional Meeting in McPherson at 5:30, and finally, the December 6th through 8th KASB Annual Conference, which is in Wichita this year. I think I'll start with Emma.
Attended the KASB workshop, and I'm going to let Carol tell you the details of that. And then also attended the program this morning with the Foundation for Teachers, and the South High Guitar Band played, and that they are tremendous, and it was a very, very good morning session. So really appreciate all they do.
Thank you. Carol?
The special education workshop that was sponsored by Kansas Association of School Boards was attended by Emma, myself, our heroic Mike Lowers, who just really did an excellent job with a panel discussion. He had plenty of information to give. And Lisa Peters was there as well, not feeling very well that morning, so she took off early. Anyway, I took off in the afternoon too, so I'm not bragging. One of the things that I thought was rather important was that KASB's representative, Chip Slavin, who is the Chief Advocacy Officer for the National Association of School Boards in this area, gave us the view from Washington, D.C., and I think it's very clear from his perspective that that atmosphere is so politically charged that there are many members of, well, any number of politicians, let me put it that way, who are not particularly concerned about public education. And political gamesmanship takes up a lot more time than really being concerned about solving the problems. There are a couple of bills that have passed the House of Representatives with bipartisan sponsorship, and we would like to see both of those enacted. At present, and you may have heard this, Senator Pat Roberts has said that he approves of those measures, but Jerry Moran has not committed. And so one of the things that Slavin suggested was that there needed to be some kind of an organized effort to get Senator Moran to come out on the side of increasing special ed funding, at least if it works out that that's the best answer. Again, the political climate, sometimes you don't know what you should be doing because somebody else is going to be going in another direction that throws everything into real issues. So I think one of the things that we want to do probably is to see if we can't get a lot of people within our area of CKCIE to put some pressure on Moran. And we'll get some more information out on those two bills, I think, so that the people in our district can deal with this. But it certainly is an issue that we need to be working on. And of course, the SEF breakfast this morning, as everyone noted, was really very good. And our address from Lynn thanking SEF for what it has done for this district over the years was very well spoken. So appreciate that.
Thank you. Gary?
My only report would be I was able to attend some of the meeting this morning, but I had to leave with business out of town, but some of the SEF meeting.
Thank you. Jim?
I apologize, I was not able to attend this morning because of work obligations. But I was at the Heartland Advisory Council meeting last week, and they're well underway.
Good. Nedra?
I did attend the Salina Education Foundation Breakfast of Appreciation this morning, and it was, I think, a packed house. People there, and Matt Gary with his guitars from South Middle was exemplary. They even have singers to go with it, and and yes, and a drum sound and everything. They do a marvelous job, and I've also been in contact with KASB on the legislative side, and we are looking at specifically promoting concerns about vaping in schools, and I think that's a big, huge concern at the high schools. And I noticed that there is a confirmed death now of a student vaping in Kansas. So that is a concern, and that will probably most likely be on our agenda in December. Other than that, I'm good.
Thank you. Gabe?
As well as most everyone here attended the SEF breakfast this morning. I would just say thank you to the trustees, including those that sit on our board as well, donors, and Pam McIntyre for all the work they do for our students and teachers. Got to see one marathon at sunset last week, hoping to make it to another tomorrow, and had my first Crispito meal of the year at Coronado last week. So, always a treat.
Thank you. Well, this is Arts in Education Week. I was notified of that this morning by the Salina Arts and Humanities. And so if anyone wants to, excuse me, tweet out a picture of arts in the schools, you can do hashtag because of arts ed, and it will become part of a giant movement, I'm sure. And I got my requests from the teachers this week for the Arts Infusion program, so I'll be busy working on that. I attended my first Chamber of Commerce board meeting, and the main presenter was our own Lynn Exline, superintendent, talking about all the great stuff going on in the Salina Public Schools. I am continuing to have coffee with the school board candidates, and I think I have one left. It seems like a lot of good people are running, so I'm not very worried about us. And I finished streaming all the candidate interviews on Salina Media Connection, which if you want to do it too, you can go to salinatv.org. I attended a Labor Day event at Ad Astra, which had all the school board candidates spending 2 minutes to tell their stories of why they're running for office, and I had a good time doing that. I was also I was in Manhattan on Labor Day Sunday to sing, and I heard their local school board candidates talking, and they are now calling soft skills power skills. So that's like a more punchy name for soft skills that we're all supposed to be teaching and learning in the schools. And this morning I attended the Salina Education Foundation breakfast and was very happy to hear Mr. Gary's guitars. As for vaping, the League of Women Voters is having a lunch and learn on the second Tuesday in October about the dangers. Oh, wait, it's in November. The second Tuesday in November about vaping. That's at 12:15 at the library in the lower level of the library. That's all I have. And Ms. Exline, it's time for the superintendent's report.
Madam President, thank you. I was able to attend the Department of Homeland Security active shooter training. Mrs. Rector and I went to that together and got some really good information, and we'll be, we're always looking for ways to make our schools safer for kids, and so it's always good to hear from the experts. I had the chance to meet with a couple community members that are partners of ours, Eric Brown from the Chamber of Commerce, and Mike Herman and Ryan Showman from Kansas Wesleyan. And so just trying to build partnerships and continue to expand those relationships in the community. The highlight of my week was going to award our Horizon Award teachers. Got to go over to Cottonwood and recognize Kelsey Plummer, and then ran out to South High to recognize Kristen Hanks, both very deserving, and they will be applying now for the state level recognition, and I anticipate they'll do very well at that level. The last thing that I'd like to share with you is that tomorrow I am going to attend the Kansas State Board of Education meeting, because we do have a staff member who will be presenting about grading practices. There are several districts that have been selected to come and talk about progressive grading practices, and USD 305 is one of those. And so I just want you to know that, that the hard work there is being recognized, and Jolene Goodhart-Peterson will be representing our district tomorrow for that conversation, and I wouldn't miss it, so I will be traveling to hear that conversation.
Thank you. Since we don't have any executive session, we will go into recess for, let's say, 10 minutes. So let's start at 6:10 to start the work session. I think I can just declare that. Is that right? I have heard that we should just go into recess. So I'll declare us in recess right now. I don't know if they gave me lots of instructions to just do a recess. And anyone is welcome to come into the Schmidt room for our work session on special ed.
Deborah, you're right. Yeah. Deborah, you're right. I can't attend any of that. I totally,
Okay, sounds good.
I'm going to just I messed up royally.
That's why. You need to be wearing your
I know it. It's all Claudia's business.
So none of it.
She's none of it.
Okay, perfect.
Yes, yes.
That's what I thought
She's
your
gonna
last
shoot
email.
me. Yes,
No.
it was.